This presentation today is going to cover the centrifuge market.
Did you hit record, Bob?
I did hit record,
Oh,
yes,
okay. Okay. Sorry. I don't know.
no problem. Yeah, this report today and analysis is going to cover the centrifuge market. And one of the important ways that you ensure accuracy is to analyze all the companies that make centrifuges and determine what their market share is, not only globally, but for each region and in each application. And this is the approach that's been used by the Mcilvaine company for decades. And here is a demonstration of how it works with the centrifuge market. So this is our 2019 analysis, and it accompanies the sedimentation and sedimentation market report that has forecasts for every country and every industry. But the uh, companies that have been identified have most of the market, and the others are estimated, but we do know who many of them are. We just didn't include their numbers because they are smaller in the analysis. And the way the market shares have been grouped initially is in major areas like power, oil and gas, refining, and petrochemicals, and they're all part of the energy section. The water includes municipal water, the other includes mining, steel, and so forth. And then life sciences includes chemicals, food, and beverage, etc. But we also are conducting market share analyses in each of the subsegments. So in the food and beverage, we would divide food and beverage into brewing, wine, various different other areas, including edible oil. And then you can also divide edible oil into corn, palm, and others, about 7 different types of oils. And they are distinct because with palm oil, for instance, the market is in Indonesia and it's a different animal, so to speak, or a different plant, I should say, than your corn oil. And the same thing would be for sugar. You've got cane sugar and you've got beet sugar, and your cane sugar would be India and Brazil. Your beet sugar would be Europe and the US and places like that. And processes are slightly different. So these are the future market share analysis that we'll be doing. But initially, we're just displaying market share analyses in these major categories. Again, the energy, water, other life sciences, and areas. So these are the way the revenues shape up for the individual companies. And so the revenues, this is in 2019 numbers, and it gets us to our total of the total revenues for centrifuges worldwide. So the subsegments can also have already been determined, but we don't have the market shares for each one of them as yet. But for instance, the disc centrifuge forecasts for every year up through 2024 are available, segmented into chemical, food, pharmaceuticals, metals, mining, pulp and paper, etc. So the aggregation of these numbers has been compiled for each of the types of centrifuges, and then for each one of the regions. So you can look at decanter centrifuges and see the totals just for or the regions, or you can look for the individual countries. So this is all part of the report. So we have historical revenues for some of the countries, companies as well. And then we get into the exhibition analysis. And the reason the exhibitions are important is it's a way for us to validate how active many of the centrifuge companies are, not only in the regions, but in the products. So the frac sand in conference last year in Houston, Andritz was really the only centrifuge supplier who was exhibiting there. But that is a big and growing market for a unique product, which is manufactured sand for use in hydrofracking. There are big exhibitions such as EFOT, which is a municipal wastewater exhibition in Munich, where there are a number of centrifuge suppliers. And at a exhibition such as WIFTech, we actually did a tour guide of all the centrifuges that were on display, and that's linked from the report. ACMA is the largest chemical exposition in the world, and there were a number of centrifuges on display there as well. The Offshore Technology Show is a big one that has a number of centrifuge, and then displays. And then we took some of the individual companies. You can see somebody like Andritz is involved in exhibitions all over the world, and some of them are relatively small. Some of the bigger centrifuge companies reveal quite a bit about their sales in their annual reports. And so this is an important, and since they're some of the bigger companies, it's important to carefully peruse the numbers that they are presenting. And in some cases, they also present the market shares for their competitors. And we don't necessarily always agree with the numbers we see in some of those financial statements, and they don't seem to agree with each other as well. But we're fairly confident that we have some unique abilities here to ferret out the market shares. And mostly it's just hard work and the fact that we've been at it a long while. Also, the fact that we look at all the other products. So as somebody like Alfa Laval, we also are trying to determine their market shares for valves, for pumps, for filters, and membranes. So centrifuges would just be one of the products. So when they have a separations group number, we have the ability to look at their market share and their sales in each of these subcategories, and gives us a pretty good idea as to what their sales are for a particular product. The number of companies that we're reviewing was 47 in this particular study, and we did view a lot of the different industries that where they are involved. And again, as I was saying before, there is a lot of good basic information in the market reports, and the details on these centrifuges themselves are being pursued in the bigger market report, where we look at where basket centrifuges are displayed, are used, where various different decanter centrifuges are displayed. We've just completed a separate report, which is available at no additional charge, on screen scroll centrifuges. And screen scroll centrifuges are a type of what we call in the other centrifuge category. They're not in the big disc category or in the decanter category, but they would be in the same category with the basket centrifuges, although they're a continuous device. And these screen scroll centrifuges are used in coal, and they're used in even in the food industry. The fact that that a lot of these companies provide references is important as well. It gives you an idea of where some of their applications are. And somebody like Siebtechnik is, for instance, is a leader in the with their gun turbex. They're a leader actually in the what we call screen scroll centrifuges. SPX is involved in a number of different industries, and they really only have the small portion of their total is in the centrifuge with cytol. But since we're also looking at valves and pumps and mixers and other components that are made by SPX, we have the ability to ferret out the from presentations like this, ferret out the centrifuge portions of the total, and then to compare it to our overall forecasts. And our overall forecasts are completed based on the knowledge of, for instance, in a municipal wastewater plant, how likely is the owner to use a decanter centrifuge as opposed to a belt filter press or a plate and frame filter press, which would be give you drier sludges. And so these are the types of technical aspects that we are looking at as well. And the same goes in other areas where there other types of processes. For instance, in the brewing industry, there are filtration steps, and you can use diatomaceous earth and filters. You're paying a lot more for the operating chemicals that you would be using, and you may not get as good results, but it's a lot cheaper than using, for instance, even in a small craft brewery at 25 gallons an hour, you're talking about a $100,000 investment just for a centrifuge. So it generally pays to use a centrifuge where you do have continuous use for the separation process. So these are the, and then Westpro happens to be a Chinese company. There's a lot going on in China. China's developed its own centrifuge companies. It's also the largest user of centrifuges in the world. So any analysis of the market shares of the suppliers has to take into account those that are provided by the Chinese companies. I'd like to thank you for spending some time to discuss the centrifuge market with us today. Keep in mind that this is part of the Sedimentation and Centrifugation report that also provides numbers for clarifiers and hydrocyclones. I would be glad to answer any questions. My name is Bob Mcilvaine, and you can reach me at 847-226-2391. The details on the report are at www.mcilvainecompany.com, and then click under Markets at the top and Sedimentation and Centrifugation. Thank you very much.